And there is a growing debate over America's immigration laws, and now it's right in our nation's capital. That's right, Washington, D.C. police have announced some new guidelines. Has everybody talking? Because they're saying they will not ask folks they come in contact with about their immigration status, even if they're suspected of a crime. Now, for many, it's a sharp contrast to states like Alabama and Georgia, where laws are getting tougher. And as Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano points out, the feds could really use the help.
There are 10 million or so illegal immigrants probably in the country, and the Congress gives us the resources to remove approximately 400,000 per year. The question is, who are we going to prioritize?
And whose job is it? Joining us now, Bob Dane. He's the communications director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, and immigration attorney Francisco Hernandez. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Francisco, whose responsibility is it, the feds or the state?
Well, it's absolutely the federal government's job. I mean, Alabama and Georgia and Arizona passed laws to do what the federal government is supposedly not doing. So Washington, D.C. is just telling them we're not going to do the federal government's job. And quite frankly, it's not the local police officer's job to be determining what immigration laws apply or do not apply. It's just asking for mistakes, and mistakes have been made for years.
But, Bob, what about if the local authorities decide, as they are in D.C., to say, we're not going to ask, we can't even call in ICE, the immigration officials, if we need to?
It's like San Francisco East now here in Washington. I mean, you've got most of the country moving to more of a fix-it mentality to reduce the cost, the impact of illegal immigration, because the federal government isn't doing it properly. And yet now you've got a sanctuary mentality here in Washington. Sanctuary city policies are dangerous. They're counterproductive to reducing illegal immigration. I mean, how can a politician, and Mayor Gray here in Washington, whose job it is to provide limited community services to legal residents, ever justify advertising Washington, D.C. as a safe haven for illegal aliens and just encourage more?
It's completely wrong.
Well, Francisco, explain your feeling on this, but if the feds and the state don't work together, there won't be any enforcement, potentially.
Well, of course they work together. Washington, D.C. still has to make their computers and their databases available, and they didn't say they weren't going to report any serious crimes. They're just not going to be going around asking people whether they're here with residency or citizenship or a visa or anything that's not within their scope of their duties as police officers.
So you're in favor of limiting law enforcement on this? And
no, they're not limiting law enforcement. You don't need Washington, D.C. for immigration to do their job. They have the same access as anybody does. They can check them every single day on their computer database. Washington, D.C. is just telling them, look, we're not going to be out here as troops for you to determine who you want to hold and who you don't want to hold.
Well, it seems like the D.C. policy, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, is saying that they won't ask even if they suspect there's a reason to ask. And let's just put up the map of all the sanctuary cities at this point. I mean, these are the places where illegals can go, and even if they commit a crime, they won't have to worry about being asked, and they won't be deported.
It's a don't ask.
The thing is, if they get arrested for a crime, they will be checked at the jail.
It's a don't ask, don't tell policy. In effect, it's come one, come all. Look, it's asking law enforcement to do something that goes against every grain in their body, and that is to not identify the bad guys, to release the bad guys out on the street, and to compromise public safety. I will guarantee you one thing. Tonight, at some point in Washington, D.C., a police officer will come across a vehicle. There'll be 5 people in that car. No one will have registration, a driver's license, proof of insurance, Social Security card. No one will speak English at that point. Now, common sense would dictate that you inquire about immigration status. But evidently, for the mayor of D.C., we're just in a catch-and-release mode.
All right,
again,
Francisco,
compromising public safety.
Francisco, before we go, I want to ask you, because when you look at Governor Brewer and the regulations that they were trying, SB 1070, you're well familiar with it. The claim was that the federal government wasn't funding or enforcing policy enough. Do you think there should be changes made to the system?
Well, but they're completely wrong if that's their argument. Every single person that goes through a jail or through a county jail is going to be vetted through the federal system anyway. So they don't need the local community's cooperation. Even in Washington, D.C., if somebody's arrested for a serious offense, they're going to run them through the immigration database anyway. And then immigration decides whether they want to put a hold on them or not. So it's really not about what they're arguing.
No. The mayor is just thumbing his nose at all of it.
Bob, I got to leave it there. It's a hot-button issue, without a doubt. Thank you so much for the fair and balanced comments, both sides being heard today.
Thank you.
Thank you.